Hello everyone, Victor is here, and in this video I want to talk about the hydrohalogenation of alkenes, the reaction mechanism, the Markovnikov's rule, and of course the pesky carbocation rearrangements that plague this wonderful reaction. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, grab yourself a notebook, and let's get started. Alright, so what is the hydrohalogenation of alkenes to begin with? That is a type of a reaction where we obviously have an alkene as a starting material, and our alkene is going to react with some sort of HX, hydrogen halide, where X is typically chlorine, bromine, or iodine. So, in the course of this reaction, one carbon is going to get a hydrogen, while the other carbon is going to get our halide. So let's look at this mechanism a little bit closer. In this reaction, we are going to be reacting with an alkene, and I don't care about the exact nature of my alkene for right now. Let's just say that this alkene has carbon number 1 and carbon number 2. So what's going to be happening here first is the pi bond that I have connecting my carbons of the alkene is going to be playing a role of a nucleophile in this reaction, which means that those electrons going to go onto the hydrogen, which in turn going to return the electrons onto the bromine. HBr is an extremely polar molecule. Bromine, being an electronegative element, is going to be pulling electron density towards itself, and because of that the hydrogen is going to be developing a very significant delta plus charge. So because of that it is going to be very electrophilic, while the double bond, the pi bond, is a fluffy cloud of the electron density, so it is somewhat nucleophilic. And of course, if we have a nucleophile and an electrophile in our reaction, they are going to react with each other. This first step is classified as the electrophilic attack because usually we classify our reaction based on the reagent. It's called a classification based on reagent, and our substrate is an alkene, so the reagent must be HBr, and HBr is the electrophile. In the course of this first step of this reaction, I'm going to be making a bond between carbon and my hydrogen, one of the carbons. And because the electrons that are used to make this new red bond between my carbon and hydrogen are coming from the pi bond, the other carbon that used to be making this double bond is going to have the plus charge because now it does not have electrons on it, so it's electron depleted, or electron deficient in other words. And of course, on top of that, we are now going to be seeing the Br- floating around. Well, now the tables are turned, because now the carbon, our carbocation, is going to be extremely electrophilic. It is only 6 electron species, so it doesn't have the full octet, while Br has the excess of the electron density, it has a negative charge, so Br is going to be nucleophilic. Because of that, we can write the next step where Br is going to be attacking our carbocation in the nucleophilic attack step, which going to create me my final product where hydrogen is attached to one carbon and bromine is attached to a different carbon. Now let's look at the example with a real molecule and not some sort of imaginary double bond. Here I have one methyl cyclohexene, and in this case I again have carbons number 1 and carbon number 2. So the double bond, like in my previous example, is going to be playing role of a nucleophile, so that double bond is going to come in and attack my hydrogen, or we can say hydrogen attacks our double bond, and the electrons from HBr bond go back onto the bromine. In this case, I have carbon number 1 or carbon number 2, which can gain that proton. So let's draw both possibilities. If carbon number 1 gets my proton, then I get this type of a carbocation. If carbon number 2 gets the proton, well, then I get a different carbocation. Remember, we did have a hydrogen on carbon number 2 to begin with, so that hydrogen, I'm drawing that in purple, didn't go anywhere else. That hydrogen is still here. It is the new hydrogen that we are adding to our molecule, so I'm going to highlight that in green, so it's this hydrogen that is going to end up either on my carbon number 1 or my carbon number 2. And because we're adding hydrogen to one of those carbons, the other carbon is going to end up with the plus charge. Now we know that carbocations are not all the same. The one that I have on the left side, that one is a secondary carbocation, while the one that I have on the right side, that one is a tertiary carbocation. And I'm going to remind you real quick here that a tertiary carbocation is going to be more stable than a secondary carbocation, which in turn is going to be more stable than the primary carbocation, which is going to be more stable than CH3 plus methyl carbocation. And we remember that primary carbocation and CH3 plus, those guys are science fiction for our purposes, so we're not going to be seeing much of those. Now, in this case, since I can potentially make two different carbocations, and there is nothing in this reaction that can prevent formation of one versus the other one, it means that I can choose. And of course, like in any reaction in organic chemistry, I am going to choose the more stable carbocation. So here we are going to say that my carbocation number 2 is going to be the one that actually forms, and carbocation number 1 is not going to be a viable option for us. Then, once we have our carbocation, the next step is going to be the nucleophilic attack by our Br-. So I'm going to show the Br-, and I will show that that Br- is attacking our carbocation. So as a result, we are going to end up with a molecule where we have the methyl group, then we have Br, and I will also show both of my hydrogens, the one that we have added to the molecule and the one that was there to begin with. So we can see that we ended up with a molecule where the halide is on the more substituted carbon, while the hydrogen is on the less substituted carbon. This empirical observation was noticed by Vladimir Markovnikov, who, at the end of the 19th century, formulated this as a rule, so we know that as Markovnikov's rule. And the classic Markovnikov rule basically says that in the hydrohalogenation of the alkenes, in this reaction, hydrogen goes to the less substituted carbon, and the X, the halide, goes to the more substituted carbon. And by more or less substituted, we mean that whichever carbon has more other carbon substituents, or other substituents in general, is going to be the more substituted one. So in this case, our carbon where the bromine is attached is connected to 1, 2, 3 other carbons, and the less substituted carbon, so in this case it's going to be the one where the hydrogen is attached, while that one is connected to only 1, 2 other carbons. Of course, the modern Markovnikov rule states that the electrophilic addition to alkenes proceeds through the formation of the most stable carbocation. However, in the times of Markovnikov, carbocations have not yet been discovered, so they had no idea what was going on there from the mechanistic perspective, which means that the only evidence that he could see was the final products. And based on those final products, he formulated his rule. However, if you ever come across the original Markovnikov's article, which is going to be a little bit difficult to do, but you never know. If you do, there will be one interesting observation in that article where he says that sometimes the halide ends up on a completely random atom. So it's not going to be on the atom where you expect it, but somewhere else in your molecule, and he was really puzzled by that. Now, of course, we know that the cause for that is carbocation rearrangements, because we have carbocation as an intermediate in this reaction. So let me demonstrate that with an example. Suppose we have a reaction like that. Step number 1 is going to be the electrophilic attack, where the double bond is going to reach out, give the electron density to the hydrogen, and then hydrogen will release its electrons to the chlorine atom. That can give me two different products. Product number 1 is going to be if I attach my hydrogen to carbon number 1. Well, in that case, if I'm adding hydrogen over there, then my carbocation is going to end up on carbon number 2. And the other product that we can get here, if I were to add my hydrogen to carbon number 2, then a carbocation is going to end up on carbon number 1. So that is my carbon 1, 2, carbon 1, and 2. So carbon number 1 has a couple of original hydrogens that were there to begin with. Well, those guys are still there in both cases, just like that. Then the hydrogen that we are adding to our molecule is going to be either sitting on carbon number 2 or carbon number 1, depending on which molecule we're looking at. And of course, carbon number 2 had a hydrogen to begin with as well, so that hydrogen there, and that hydrogen is still there, so it didn't go anywhere. Now, Just like in the previous case, we're going to look at both of our carbocations and decide which carbocation is better. And of course, carbocation number 1 in this particular case is going to be better because that is a secondary position versus the primary position that I have on the right side. So because I have a secondary versus primary carbocation, I'm going to go with the secondary carbocation and I'm going to discard my primary one as the unlikely outcome of this step. Now, normally, after this point, we would proceed with our nucleophilic attack and get the product. However, we remember that as soon as we form a carbocation, we always have to check for possible carbocation rearrangements, because if a carbocation can rearrange to give you something more stable, it absolutely will do so. So in this case, I have the original secondary position of my carbocation. Nearby, I have a primary position. Well, I definitely do not want to have my carbocation over there. But on top of that, I have a tertiary position nearby. And if I have my carbocation in the tertiary position, well, that one is going to be significantly more stable, which means that I do have driving force for my reaction. I'm going to actually redraw this carbocation because my picture is kind of cluttered by now. So here is my carbocation. Now, in order to do that carbocation rearrangement, what I would have to do, I would have to first locate the hydrogen that I have on that carbon to the left, that implicit hydrogen, and the carbocation rearrangement happens when we take the hydrogen with all of its electrons and move that towards the carbon with the carbocation. So we are going to perform our 1,2 hydride shift. So as a result of this 1,2 hydride shift, I am now going to get a new, more stable tertiary carbocation right here. Now remember that my old carbocation, there was a hydrogen over here, my pink hydrogen, and the new hydrogen that I moved around, my black hydrogen, is right there. So I didn't lose anything, hydrogen didn't just disappear into thin air. Remember, just because things are implicit doesn't mean that they don't exist, they're still there. Sometimes we're just not going to be showing them. So now, when my carbocation as humanly stable, or as carbocationically stable, I guess, as it can be, we can proceed to our next step, which is going to be the nucleophilic attack. So the nucleophile in this case is going to be Cl- that I have formed in the first step of this reaction. So my Cl- is going to come in and perform the nucleophilic attack on the carbocation, which is going to give me a new carbon-chlorine bond, so I have my new bond over here. If I didn't think about the carbocation rearrangement, if I didn't do that at all, then the product that I would anticipate in that case would have been attacked by Cl- on the original carbocation, and that would give me a product that looks like that. However, we know that carbocations do rearrange when they have something more stable that they can form right away, which means that in this case, the absolute majority of our carbocation intermediates, the secondary carbocation intermediates that we form from the very beginning, will rearrange to the tertiary carbocation, because there is a driving force for it. The tertiary carbocation is more stable, which means that this product that I just drew here in blue, well, that one is going to be a very minor product. And the major product is going to be the one that forms via the carbocation rearrangement, that guy. So now, when we know the mechanism for this reaction and we know the carbocation rearrangements that can happen due to our carbocation intermediate, let's look at a couple more examples. Pause this video, work through this example in your notebook, and then once you are ready, let's check it together. Alright, so step number 1 is going to be the electrophilic attack. So electrons go from the double bond towards my HI, and the electrons go from HI bond onto the iodine. As a result of this step, we are going to form a carbocation. Now, there are two positions where I can make a carbocation. There is a carbon number 1 and carbon number 2. Carbon number 2 is a more substituted position, which means that I am going to end up with a carbocation right over there and not on my carbon number 1. Then I'm going to analyze my carbocation. This is already a tertiary position, which means that rearrangements are going to be unlikely because the position nearby is secondary and the other two positions that I have next to this tertiary carbocation are primary, so we're definitely not rearranging our carbocation towards those carbons. Which means that it is safe for us to proceed with the nucleophilic attack, where my I- is going to attack our carbocation, giving us the final product that looks like this. How about this example? So here, like in the previous example, step number 1 is going to be the electrophilic attack on our alkene, which is going to give us a carbocation. Now I'm going to redraw the stem for my molecule and analyze the positions of my carbons again. I have a carbon number 1 and a carbon number 2. Carbon number 1 is a primary carbon, 2 is a secondary carbon, so, like in the previous case, I would want to have a more stable carbocation, which means that I'm going to place that on carbon number 2. Then, when I analyze my carbocation, I will immediately see that my original secondary carbocation is right next to a tertiary position, which means that the carbocation rearrangement here is going to be extremely likely, and in order to do so, I'm going to first draw out this implicit hydrogen that I have. Then I will take the hydrogen with all of its electrons and move it to the position where my carbocation is. And in the course of this carbocation rearrangement, I'm going to end up with a carbocation that is now on a tertiary carbon, so that is a significantly more stable carbocation. It is as stable as it can be in this particular case, which means that we can proceed with our nucleophilic attack, which is going to be the attack by Cl- onto this position, giving me my final product being like this, where I have the ethyl group and then I have my chlorine atom on the same atom on the ring over here. Did you remember about the carbocation rearrangement, or did I catch you on this question? Let me know in the comments below. And let's do one more example. Here we are going to start by attacking our double bond with HBr. Again, the first step is always going to be same deal with those reactions, nothing more, nothing less. It's always going to be the electrophilic attack on the alkene. This way, I'm going to form potentially two different carbocations. So when I'm analyzing my carbocations, I will have a little bit of a conundrum, because a possibility number 1 will look something like that, while a possibility number 2 gives me this species. Now, which one should I choose, or are they both going to be formed at roughly same quantity? The one on top, the number 1, is a secondary carbocation, so I'll say that that is a secondary position. The one on the bottom is also a secondary position, but the one on top is right next to an aromatic ring, so it is going to be able to use the aromatic ring for the resonance stabilization. And we remember that the resonance stabilized carbocations are significantly more stable than regular ones. So the top one is not just a simple secondary position, but it is also a benzylic position, which means that in comparison is way more stable than the other one. So I will choose the top carbocation and not the bottom one. And of course the last step in this reaction is going to be the attack by our Br-, the nucleophilic attack, which going to give me the final product where my Br- is going to be making a new bond with a carbon, so I am going to end up with the final product looking just like this. Easy enough, right? Well, make sure you review your carbocations and carbocation rearrangements by watching this video. Leave me your questions and feedback in the comments below, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video.